Hello, welcome to the Transfer Exchange Show in association with CaughtOffside. I'm your host, Kieran Stewart, and we're in for an absolute banger of a show tonight. So let's get started. Joining me is Manchester football correspondent of The Guardian and The Observer and author of The Red Apprentice and Ole Gunnar Solskjaer biography is Jamie Jackson. How you doing, Jamie?
Very good, thank you. How are you?
I'm good. Also joining me tonight is former Bristol Rovers, Wigan, West Bromwich Albion and Watford striker. And for the purpose of this show, Man United fan, Nathan the Duke Ellington. How you doing, Nathan?
I'm great, thanks.
And forming a devastating partnership up top is former Manchester United, Barnsley and Wales forward, Daniel Nardiello. How you doing, Daniel?
Yeah, good, thank you. Thanks for having me on.
All right. Let's get started. Jamie, Man United fans globally want to see new faces come through the old door at Old Trafford. But it seems like the hierarchy upstairs want to see a manager come in first. Who is Manchester United's number one target for manager?
Very good question. I think there's two number one targets, if I can put it that way. Mauricio Pochettino, obviously the PSG current manager and former Spurs manager, and Erik ten Hag, who's the gentleman who's in charge of Ajax, who are the current Dutch champions. But there's another gentleman maybe who, we can mention some other names, but who's got a chance, and that's the guy actually there at the moment, Ralf Rangnick. Okay. I think there's a stat, for example, around that the only team that's collecting more points since he's been in charge, Manchester City. We all know how good they are.
Yeah,
that's the kind of impact he's having. Mm-hmm. It's not perfect. We saw the game yesterday; they were very good. It was a cracking game, wasn't it, against Leeds? Class, sort of showed in the end from United. But yeah, I think you could, it's probably between those two at the moment. I think it'd still be a surprise if Rangnick got the job, but if they end top four and it's a happy camp and you can see sort of real progress, then yeah, he's got a chance.
Mm-hmm. Daniel, do you have any sort of preference for the managers to take over at the end of the season?
To be honest, I don't know an awful lot about Ten Hag. I know he's been very successful and he's obviously brings a lot through a lot of youth players and he's very well thought of at Ajax and around world football. Pochettino, I think he's done a great job everywhere he's been. I think he implements a style of play. How his teams are going to play. He gets the best out of certain players when other managers maybe haven't. So for me, I'd probably lean towards Pochettino just because I know more about him and I think he knows the English game. He knows the clubs in English football. I think he could do a really good job, providing he gets the backing from the board, money in the bank to spend on the players that he wants, and more importantly, give him time because it's a big job, isn't it? So Rangnick, I think he's done well, but I do think for me, I'd probably just go for Pochettino.
Okay. Nathan, do you have a preference from the names that are out there? I know that previously there was Zidane, but that looks like it's off the table. As Jamie's saying, Ten Hag or Pochettino, it seems like are the main players in this one. What's your thoughts on the situation?
Well, to be honest, when you look at the two managers that are most favourite to take over, when you look at Pochettino, it's a thing where you know what he's done in the Premiership in the past already, and you see how far he's taken Tottenham with a limited budget. And also he's taken them to the finals of the Champions League of all things. And we all like the way he played and the way he gets his team playing football as well, with the pressure and with the overlapping and just the great football that you want to see. So when you're seeing that coming from Tottenham, you're thinking, right, what can he do if it's Man United with a bigger budget and with more to deal with? So yeah, for me, that's someone who I'm leaning towards as well. Like Daniel said, we don't know too much about Ten Hag. Plus, we don't know too much about that league as well. So, although he's doing really well, winning the league and stuff, and doing really well in the Champions League, I think that's the bit that gives him a bit more credibility as well. But I still edge towards Pochettino, even though he didn't win the league yet, and he just, he was just short of the Champions League. But that, to me, I don't see that as too much failure. I think that's a real good achievement with what he had. I think it's a really good achievement. So, yeah, I'd be happy that if he came to United, to be honest.
Yeah. Daniel, some people say that they wouldn't want Poch maybe because he's not won anything or he's not got that. He's not a serial winner, as some may say. Do you buy into that?
No, not at all. I think Nathan touched on it there, didn't he? The fact that he brought that Tottenham squad to where they weren't far off winning the Premier League. He's done well in France. He was ever so close to win the Champions League as well. I think the experience is there. I just think he needs a bit more quality in and around the squad to enable him to win the Premier Leagues, to win the Champions Leagues. And I'll say it again, it's a big job coming to Manchester United because it's not going to happen overnight. I can see eight or nine players leaving in the summer, and he's got to rebuild. He's got to get players in, and he's got to get a number of positions filled and also bulk up the squad. So it's a tough job, but I do think, given time, he could definitely prove his worth to Manchester United.
Yeah. Jamie, you said that Ralph Rangnick is still one of the names that could potentially still be in the frame. Has he identified any players that he would like to bring in already?
Yeah, this is a really interesting question because, obviously, if he does not get the main job, which at the moment he probably won't, he's still got a consultancy role there. So he's in this situation where actually, to a certain extent, his job description might be advising, who should be the manager. And also, to touch upon your question, obviously, which players. Now, I think there is a list of players there which existed before Solskjaer got sacked because, Solskjaer helped draw it up with John Merton, the director of football. Now, Ralph Rangnick's come in. He's got knowledge of sort of particularly German football, obviously being German, having worked at Salzburg, etc. So one name which I think everyone is kind of familiar with, which is definitely still on the list, is Declan Rice. And Jude Bellingham is another one. Is obviously, we know he's English. He played very, I don't know what you gents all think and the sort of viewers. He played very good for England, I thought, as a sort of 17, 18-year-old in the Euros when he was, when he's chosen. He's tearing it up again this season. He's only 18. Yeah. He obviously had that tour of Manchester United. Nobody nearly joined. I think he met Ferguson, Sir Alex Ferguson. I'm talking about these two players in particular is because they need a central midfielder. It's interesting. If you go back, they've not actually signed, I would say, a good enough Manchester United central midfielder since Michael Carrick, I think in 2006. Now, Paul Pogba is a heck of a player. I love him. I'm not so sure he's a central midfielder as I'm discussing. Maybe you might have a different opinion about it. Don't get me wrong; he's a brilliant footballer. I don't get this whole thing about Paul Pogba's not that good. He's absolutely amazing footballer. Yeah. I say they need at least one central midfielder. I think Tielemans is interesting as well. The player at Leicester. But I think if they could, it's a big if. But because Declan Rice was obviously, I think he's a Chelsea fan. He was at Chelsea. But if you could get him in, does he make the team better? Yes. Does Jude Bellingham make the team better? Yes. Does Tielemans? Yes. So, I would suggest that Rangnick, I don't think he's going to be sitting there saying no, advising against, those sort of 2 or 3 names I've mentioned there. And then the other position we can go on to in a bit is centre forward. They need to sort of have a think about. Cavani's 35, going to be 36, injury prone. Ronaldo's a brilliant player, but he's not going to be able to play all the time. We're sort of seeing this season how good he's been. But, long term, they need to centre forward.
Yeah, definitely. Nathan, your face lit up when Jamie started speaking. What one of those or 2 of those central midfielders were you excited to see potentially that Man United should maybe push for in the summer?
Look, I'd take any of those names that you just mentioned, Jamie. So I'd be very happy with those because we can see the quality that's needed for Champions League level is much. That's what's needed at the club. Simple as that. And for me, with Sancho being at the club now and Bellingham being so young and having played with him in the past, and he plays that direct kind of football, it'd be a perfect fit for Man United now. And especially the way Rangnick wants to play as well, and the way Poch and Ten Hag want to play. So no matter who it is that comes in, I'm sure they'd be very happy with a Bellingham in your side. And then more defensive-minded Rice, who's going to shore things up, win everything and just give it simple quickly and break the lines if he has to. That's what Man United are missing. They're totally missing that kind of stuff. And then to go with a striker, we definitely need a young striker who's going to be there for many years to come. Obviously, everyone's going to say Haaland. There's no one, I don't think anyone's going to say anyone other than Haaland being the number one that I'd like to have in that side. And again, imagine Haaland with Sancho, with Bellingham, all these 3. I know it's pretty much going to be impossible to do that, but, it's just something that excites me a lot. And even if we get 2 of those 3, I'll be happy.
Yeah, definitely. Daniel, of those names, what do you think Man United need the most? The centre midfielder, people have said many times this season it's not good enough. Who do you think would solidify that midfield?
Well, it's got to be a defensive-minded central midfield player for me. I mean, like Nathan and Jamie both said, United are screaming out for a player that can sit in that position and just be disciplined and protect the back four somewhat and just cover ground. Matic for me, 10 years ago, whatever it was when he was at Chelsea, that's the kind of player he is. So, and someone that can come in and maybe learn off him if Matic stays for a bit longer, just to get that bit of guidance from above as well. So, for me, I think Declan Rice is the obvious one because yes, he can get forward, he can break the lines, and he can do that, but he's very disciplined and very, very good at what he does. My concern with it is spending too much money on these players, breaking the bank for these players, not having enough other players to fill in the other positions and the squad positions that we need to really compete and have the squad depth that, to compete with the likes of Liverpool, Man City, Chelsea. And it all depends on how much money we've got to spend in the summer. So I'll just be careful about breaking the bank too much for one individual player.
I mean, I think what I'd say about United is there's a bit of a myth that the Glazers don't spend money. They actually do, and they have done. If you go over each of their summers,
100%.
They actually do. You can have a whole different debate about whether they're good for the club. I get all that. But actually the money they spend, Pogba was a record signing. Maguire was a record for a defender, I believe. Was it 80 million?
Lukaku.
So I think there will be money there. And I think this summer, they were quite prudent, stroke clever during the pandemic with regard to, but they still had money because they are self-perpetuating. So they do make, because this commercial thing that's always thrown at the club by some, actually allows them to go out and buy Pogba for sort of 89 million. So I think the money will be there. I wouldn't be surprised they've got 150 million. Now, what does that get you these days? It probably gets you,
two players, maybe. Two
players. Yeah, it's crazy.
That's what we're looking for,
I mean,
what we're looking for,
Haaland is interesting. They basically, as it was characterised to be, walked away from the same January they got Bruno Fernandes. They walked away from a Haaland deal because of the sort of the agent sort of stipulation, what he wanted out of the deal. So they know the player, obviously, from that, but they also know kind of how a deal might work in the future with regard to, the money's required. It won't be exactly the same now. I'm not saying he would go there, but he's got this release clause. And, he's young. And what do you want if you're Manchester United? Do you want Champions League, like Nathan said, to actually be a contender? Of course you do. I really think they should go for it. You might not get Haaland, but just go for it. Why not? Let's see where the cards sort of fall on him, because you get Haaland, suddenly someone like Declan Rice will be thinking, wait a minute, you know what I mean?
Do you think Ralph Rangnick would have any influence in terms of being able to lure in the likes of Jude Bellingham? I know he's English, but the German connection, potentially if they went in for Haaland again, would he have that sort of influence in that?
Yeah, sure. I certainly think he would do, because he'll know the league. I mean, Sancho, he knew from Germany, so that's helping him now. Obviously manage him. And as I said, I think it's also quite important that they know kind of the way into that deal because of what happened last time. They were so close to it. In terms of the sums, the figures. It was just a matter of agreeing to it. It wasn't. And he was willing to go there at the time, Haaland. So, I just think that will help. That's one of the reasons maybe why they got Rangnick in, because of his sort of knowledge of German football. Because you see, there's a lot of players obviously coming over, isn't there, from that league? Yeah. But I mean, the other thing that United just got to say is that United they can pay a lot more than other clubs, and that's obviously it can be a big factor.
Definitely. Very, very true. Daniel, since Sir Alex Ferguson's left, do you feel that Man United have lost their way in the transfer market? Because from an outsider's point of view, it feels like Man United have lost that certain DNA on the pitch, if you know what I mean. Do you feel like they've gone a bit wayward in the transfer market?
Yes, I think. I mean, Fergie, there's been players over the years that Sir Alex, obviously some great players that he signed, but there was also players that didn't really do well at the club and they were mistakes. So every manager doesn't get every signing 100% correct, and Sir Alex was obviously one of those guys. But to answer your question, absolutely, I think United and specifically certain managers have gone for marquee signings, not necessarily players that fit the way that United want to play going forward. So that needs to be addressed, and that's why I said earlier, I don't want to go out and just, obviously not me, but I don't want the club to go out and just spend 150 million on this player, 100 million. They go out and try and get a few of these players that you can get for 30, 40 million that you can develop and make into great players, because there's plenty out there. There are players out there that are affordable. City have shown us that. Liverpool have shown us that they've gone out and spent 25, 30, 40, 50 million instead of 90, 100 million. So yeah, I think they need to get players in that suit the position that they can develop, as well as knowing that they've got the talent. And if you can get a Haaland or you can get a Declan Rice, but then also fill in the other positions with players of, have clearly got the ability, but they need to be developed somewhat to be, potentially great players for the club without spending too much money. Because obviously, like we said earlier, 150 million only gets you so far nowadays, doesn't it? So it's just being clever in the market. And I think Rangnick could potentially do that, going up in behind the scenes, talking to the manager, whoever that may be, Pochettino, Ten Hag, whoever it is, but then working together to get the right personnel in to really compete.
Yeah, definitely. Nathan, do you feel that Rangnick may bring a little bit of added structure or direction going forward when it does come to transfers?
Yeah, definitely, because obviously we all know what he's done in the past. What we found out since he's come, if we didn't know much about him, like me. For me, I just, from listening to some of his interviews talking about the type of football he likes to play and front foot and, pressure and rock and roll football and all this talk that he says, it's great to hear, and you want to see that kind of stuff on the pitch. And he's going to know what players he's going to need. So he's seeing the players now and realizing, right, I don't have this, I need this next season, or the new manager needs this next season. I think he's a proper thinker, and this is exactly what I was thinking about Alex Ferguson. Alex Ferguson, what he was so good at was, don't matter what status you are, he knew exactly what you needed for each position. One day you're going to see Fletcher in midfield with Anderson, with Ji-sung Park on the left, and that will be playing against Liverpool or in the Champions League, and you need like some kind of proper performance, and he knows what he's going to get out of that team. Then on another day, you're going to see you're going to see Keane and Scholes in the middle. So he knows it's horses for courses. It's the right combinations. It's for the football that you want to play. Players playing in their right positions. And I'm hearing the right things coming out of his mouth as well about playing players in the right positions. And he's starting to know the players a lot more. And you're seeing a bit more continuity. You're seeing a bit more of what his style is coming out in our game. Even though the results haven't been there, I saw the football change. I'm seeing the changes now. And he doesn't even have many options at the moment because players have gone on loan, certain players are injured, and then he's just left with basically near enough at like 12 or 13 players that he can really choose from to make a massive difference. And he's doing pretty well. For me, from what he's done, I think he's done pretty well so far. And once he gets his chance to bring in players, he's going to do even better if it's him.
Just sort of add to what Nathan's saying. The goal, which goal was it? The one that, where Lindelof, this is against Leeds yesterday.
Ran through 1-2.
Yeah, I mean, I've never seen that from Lindelof before. Now, it might be a one-off, but if you're looking for a coach to improve players and maybe say to a player, look, you can do this. You've got an extra dimension to your game. You two gentlemen, Daniel and Nathan, know better than me what it's like if you players. You always want to improve. And I was interested to see that. I've not seen that from Lindelof. And it's interesting. Lindelof was he was slightly ahead of Ruben Dias when he came through at Benfica, right? And the youth teams there. And at the time, Lindelof was considered and obviously he's gone to United. So he's but if you now look at sort of where, Dias was player of the year last season, you'd consider Dias the better player. But what I'm saying is Lindelof was always considered obviously he's an amazing player. But I'm looking at that and thinking, is that a little sign there of what Rangnick's doing on the coaching side? Now, he's been going since the 80s, Rangnick. I actually, when he was in charge of a German club called Hoffenheim, we were then in the second division, second tier of Germany. I went to interview him. This is about 2007, 2008. And Hoffenheim, I mean, look it up if you've got one. It's like a little village in Germany. And it's, I can't think of the exact equivalent, but it's like a very small club that, because of the ownership in Germany structurally, 50-50, it's a bit more of a level playing field between fans and, owners. I went to see him in his office. I just remember thinking, this guy is highly intelligent. As you just said, that he's a really deep thinker. And that's kind of why I thought it was an interesting appointment from United, because I wouldn't say it was left field, but it's a bit unexpected. He hadn't managed for more than a full season as a manager for 10 years. Yeah, so he'd done maybe a caretaker stint twice, but he'd never actually managed more than one season. If he's in charge of Schalke for over 10 years, then he's there in Russia, and people thinking, well, who is this guy? But knowing a little bit about him, I thought this is interesting, and he is. He knows what he's doing. And I think he's showing he can handle big players now. And what I wanted to say earlier was when we talk about Pochettino, he's now basically had a season of handling Lionel Messi. You don't get much bigger than that, right?
Yeah.
Mbappe. So you can walk in and sort of talk to Ronaldo, for example, or whoever it is. You know what I mean? So that adds to his profile. But Rangnick is an interest, and I think United, whatever happens with him, I think United have done well to employ him, because I think if he goes upstairs, to sort of use that saying, I think they're going to get all this knowledge. You know, he's got an extensive knowledge and also contacts within Europe, and he was also in charge of the New York Red Bull club, so he knows. So he's sort of got a global kind of look. For the club.
Yeah, it does feel like, just hearing what you're saying, it does feel like Rangnick and Pochettino would be a very good fit. He'd definitely get a lot more backing than he did at Tottenham in his time there, and hopefully will take the club forward. Daniel, would you like to see Man United buy more players from maybe the Premier League? Because one thing they used to buy is they used to buy a lot of the best players in the league, whether it was Rio Ferdinand, Valencia. They would see a player, Alan Smith. They would go and target that player because they knew that he would fit in the Premier League. Is what they wanted.
I think if the price is right, but I do think Premier League players, you can add on 20, 30 million for Premier League players at times, just because they're playing in the league. So yes and no. I think Fergie got the right ones in at the right time, didn't he? Like you said, I mean, the Rooney signing, the Rio Ferdinand signing, they were the best in the position, and it was a bit more of a pull then. I hate to say it, but there's a lot of big clubs now competing for the top boy in the Premier League. Back then, it was United, wasn't it? It was United, because Fergie had built it up to that level where United were the elite. They were the best. There was no comparison. Yes, Arsenal competed some years, and other clubs, Liverpool, different clubs over the years would compete at different points. But it was always United up there, wasn't it? Nowadays, you got the Cities, the Liverpools, the Chelseas. I mean, the Spurs, the West Hams, even they're able to spend a fair few quid on players. So it's got to come back to players that suit the system. It doesn't have to be English players, because United have got a history of bringing through English or young youth talent. I mean, there's loads in the team at the moment as we speak. Elanga scored at the weekend. Lingard played. Rashford on the bench. We've got multiple players in coming through the youth, and some British, not all, but. Like I said, it's the right players for the right position to help build the squad, because, like I keep on saying, it's a big job ahead.
Yeah, no, it is. It is. One thing that, as you mentioned earlier, was the players leaving. Jamie, is this the last season we're going to be seeing Paul Pogba in a Man United shirt?
This is such an interesting question. I'll tell you what, I can see it going either way. You remember when it looked like De Gea was definitely going to leave? You remember that?
Yeah. The facts.
Yeah, exactly. It was that time. I remember Van Gaal making a joke about it, when it didn't happen. And, you sort of thought, well, it's going to happen the next window or, the next summer. And here he is. I think he's just been quoted saying today or yesterday that he feels like he's from Manchester. It's been here so long.
It is,
You know what I mean? So to go back to Pogba, I think at the moment it's a favourite. The favoured option is that he will leave. I'll still be slightly surprised if he did stay, but just because Paul Pogba, for whatever reason, not his fault at all, it's been a bit of a soap opera at United. I still don't know quite which way it's gonna sort of turn, but it's going to be a free transfer. So I would suggest obviously you have to pay his wages, but for getting him for free, no signing on, no transfer fee is a heck of it. So he could within reason take his pick. I think Real Madrid, PSG, probably the two favourite clubs. So and this is why getting at least one, if not two, midfielders in this summer is going to be important, because if he leaves,
it's
a big gap.
It's a massive, massive gap in the team. Nathan, would you like to see Pogba stay?
Yeah, I would like to see him stay, but like what I always think about United, it's about the combination of players, and I think we've got the wrong combination of players in different positions, which don't allow Pogba to actually flourish. I think we need two centre-backs that can actually defend one-on-one, and not, obviously, I think Maguire's one of those players that he's good when everyone sits back and no one can get in behind him. But the minute he's asked to push up, he gets found out, defensively for pace and stuff. So what happens is Pogba plays, and then normally Pogba can do that in a France team because he's got two fast players behind him. But in this team, we get found out, and it looks like he's the one who's the one that's kind of like the weak one in midfield. So then he comes out, and we have to put another defensive midfielder in. So for me, I love Pogba. I love what he's all about, but we do have to change that back four for him to flourish. If we're not going to do that, there's no point us keeping him anyway. So the only really bad thing about this whole situation is he's going to go for free. We could have got rid of him at the start of this season and then tried to use some of that money to bring in someone. Now, we're basically going to have to use money that only money that we've got. We can't bring anything in for Lingard after he done so well on loan, and we can't bring anything in for Pogba. That's two big mistakes. And we're thinking that it's the last season. Can we get to the Champions League, far in there? Can we get into the top 4 positions using them? And then that will pay for itself. But it's hopefully that will do the job. And maybe the money from hopefully getting in that top 4 will be what they wanted in the first place. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Daniel, what do you think was the thinking behind not maybe moving on Paul Pogba, Jesse Lingard with only a year left in their contracts?
I think with Jesse, I think they wanted him to stay. I think he's a young lad. He loves the club. They thought they could probably get him for a few more years. He obviously went out and did extremely well on loan. So they thought, well, this is a great squad player for us to have here at the club. And yeah, they could have got a few million in January, couldn't they? 20-odd million, was it, that got offered? But ultimately, could Lingard be more important for the running to try and get that 4th spot or proceed, do well in the Champions League? He could have an impact. He played yesterday, didn't particularly play fantastic, but he was still thereabouts. He works his socks off, doesn't he? You know what you're going to get from him every week. So he's a good player to have in the squad. So to sell him in January, I don't disagree with too much, as well as what happened with Greenwood and other things that happened where we lost a few players. So it was probably the right thing to do to keep him. He will go in the summer, Lingard. I'm certain of that. And with Pogba again, I think they probably thought they could tie him in for a couple more years because he has got unbelievable talent. It's just the distractions that sometimes happen off the field that have been a bit detrimental to him and the club. But as Nathan said, if you can get the right people around him, if you had a Kante next to him or a Kante-esque type player next to him, the guy's an absolute genius. And even yesterday, for me, I was surprised when he got taken off. I know it worked out in the end because he was the best player on the pitch for me. So if you can get Pogba playing and you can get him happy, then it's worth the risk in trying to keep him at the club. But I'm with the other guys. I'll be very surprised if he stayed. I think he can pick his club and he'll go and make his millions and play for Real Madrid or PSG.
All right. Thank you very much. That is all we have time for. Thank you for joining us tonight, Nathan.
Thanks a lot. It's been good. It's been great.
And thank you for joining us tonight, Daniel.
I enjoyed it. Cheers, guys.
And thank you for joining us tonight, Jamie.
Great. Thanks ever so much. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for joining us, people. Make sure you smash that like and subscribe button. Make sure you go and check out CaughtOffside.com. Check out the Transfer Exchange Show on Twitter and check out Caught Offside on Twitter as well. Peace out, people. Stay safe.